So, welcome everyone to the webinar FAST-Infra Sustainable Infrastructure Label, co-hosted by the Transformative Actions Program by ICLEI World Secretariat as well as FAST-Infra Label. The FAST-Infra Label is a credible, consistent, and globally applicable labeling system designed to identify and evaluate sustainable infrastructure projects with the overarching objective of supporting infrastructure and creating a liquid asset class. I'm happy to welcome you all in today's session to introduce you TAP and give the floor to Nathalie Gallier, the Global Program Manager of FAST-Infra Label Secretariat, and Jacqueline Okeo and Umar Salman from Zanzi Clean Energy Capital. We can go to the next slide, please. So today we'll start with explaining you the housekeeping rules and give you a short introduction to the TAP, our Transformative Actions Program. Then we will dive into the FAST-Infra label. What is it? What are the benefits? The process of labeling and how it is applied with a case study. Finally, we will have a question and answer session to clarify all the points before closing the webinar. Next slide, please. We would like to highlight that this webinar is being recorded and all the participants are automatically muted. But we want this webinar as interactive as possible, and we encourage you all to write down your questions in the chat box, and the questions will be responded during the Q&A session in the end. And all presentations will be shared with participants via email. Next slide, please. And for those who are not yet very familiar with the Transformative Actions Program, we would like to introduce you to TAP. TAP's mission is to enable access to finance to scale up local climate and sustainable development action. We're working towards accelerating sustainable development, including net zero emissions and resilience. And TAP supports national ambitions through local transformative infrastructure projects. The activities of TAP first of all, TAP is a project pipeline, and it prioritizes subnational governments with place-based and people-centered projects, and it is demand-driven. It acts as a project preparation facility and provides tailored service to guide project development to achieve maturity and finance readiness. And on top of that, TAP is an advocacy instrument, presents the demand and diversity of priority subnational projects seeking support and finance. Next slide, please. To answer the question, how does TAP operate? That TAP is an initiative of partners, and through these partners that you are seeing on your screen right now, projects that apply can obtain technical assistance or receive opportunities for climate financing. All the partners support the TAP pipeline of projects to move one step closer to their implementation phase. Next slide, please. TAP application and pipeline process starts with project mobilization. Each year we open the call, and this year's call was opened in the 1st of March and will be open until the 31st of October 2024. And as we receive the projects, the screening process starts, and the screening is done through an eligibility criteria, which you can find the details on the tappotential.org website, and the completeness of application, financial feasibility, and very importantly, their transformative impact. The screening results in a scoring. However, this is not a one-step process. The feedback process can go as long as the applicants want to build upon their applications. If they score under 80%, they have the opportunity to develop their applications further. And once the application form is developed and scored over 80%, they receive the TAP seal of approval and get access to services. These services are provided also through project preparation facility, and along with it, investors and financiers. Next slide, please. While talking about the services, what do TAP offer? TAP has benefits for all the applicants that apply to the pipeline, apply to the program. They receive customized feedback and recommendations for their projects. They're provided with information on opportunities and they get access to knowledge products. They're invited to the webinars, just like today's webinars, and have the opportunity to attend peer learning and knowledge exchange workshops. On top of it, when the project is approved to the pipeline, they have the opportunity to connect with financial and technical partners and project preparation facilities. They can participate at pitch events and marketplaces, and through that, they get international visibility and case studies of successful projects built upon request. Next slide, please. To finalize the TAP introduction, since 2015, we received over 400 applications and 39 projects with 1.9 billion euros investment potential are tapped. We have produced 15 we have developed 15 knowledge products, and currently we have 79 projects in the pipeline from 35 countries in 8 regions all around the world. And last year, in 2023, we received 81 applications, and we are expecting more this year. And now I will give the floor to Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you, Nida, for the introduction, and congratulations to the TAP. That looks like a really growing initiative. Looks very promising. Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for providing the opportunity to present the FAST-Infra label. Very pleased to be here and to be able to present the FAST-Infra label to the participants today. My role is I'm the global manager of the FAST-Infra label secretariat at GIB, Global Infrastructure Foundation in Basel. The mission of the Global Infrastructure Basel Foundation is to promote sustainable, resilient and regenerative infrastructure globally. GIB has 3 pillars. One is infrastructure and the next generation, mainly around projects initiated by young people. A second pillar, which is infrastructure and nature, mainly around climate adaptation, biodiversity and resilience, mainly horizon projects. And the third pillar, is the infrastructure quality and finance, where we are having the main project is here, the FAST-Infra label, but there are two other projects under this pillar. So I'm going to present today the FAST-Infra label. I'm going to share my screen right now. So the FAST-Infra label, FAST is standing for Finance to Accelerate the Sustainable Transition, was initiated back in 2020 by a group of people sitting in an event called the One Planet Summit. They decided it was mainly private investors, and they wanted to find solutions on how to shift capital towards emerging economies in sustainable infrastructure in emerging economies. And this is how it all started. So the FAST-Infra label is providing market confidence and fostering the investment in sustainable infrastructure through a global label. And this is laying the groundwork for sustainable infrastructure to become really a deep and liquid asset class in future. So I'm going to present, there are 4 parts in this presentation. First, who we are, what we are addressing, then a spotlight on the framework itself, and then show you our journey so far in this, on the FAST-Infra label. So going to the next slide, who we are. So as I just mentioned, we are a private sector-led initiative to raise sustainable infrastructure investment in developing economies. And I will hide this. And this is how it works. So FAST-Infra Group was constituted in 2022. So as I was saying, it started all in 2020, and then this group got organized as an association in Paris, and it's called the FAST-Infra Group. Here you see the subscribing members and steering group, big investors in the infrastructure space like HSBC, Meridian, Macquarie are here. And the FAST-Infra group has under their mission 3 sub-initiatives, which one is the FAST-Infra label that we will talk about today, but there are 2 more, FAST-Infra Beyond. This is about an innovation center on technology, regulation, finance, also for the same goal, more capital shifting in infrastructure in emerging economies. And the FAST-Infra platform, this is a digital collaboration platform aiming at supporting all the stakeholders in the preparation, the development, in the financing of large infrastructure program, also in emerging economies. So I'm not going to talk about these 2 gray initiatives, but only about the FAST-Infra label. GIB is only involved in the FAST-Infra label. So you see, for the FAST-Infra label, there are 2 governance bodies, the Executive Advisory Committee. Now we have 44 members in the Executive Advisory Committee, and they elect the members of the Steering Committee, who is actually taking the decisions on the label. And the label are then implemented by Global Infrastructure Basel. So just a word on Global Infrastructure Basel. We are not totally new to the space. Global Infrastructure Basel started in 2008. And in the meantime, we assessed more than like around 200 projects for a total capex of almost 54 billion across 54 countries. So yeah, now we are starting the FAST-Infra label. So, but we have a track record with the previous SURE Sustainable and Resilient Infrastructure Standard. We are working together with our technology partner Bloomberg, who is mainly working on the data repository and the online tool that will be available later this year. Here you can see the governance bodies. So at the top, you see the steering committee. And FAST-Infra label is really a public-private partnership. And we are aiming at reflecting all the actors of the infrastructure ecosystem. So we have representatives from the public sector, from the financial sector, from the developers and the private sector, from NGOs, and academia. In the middle, you see all the Executive Advisory Committee members, and at the bottom, you see supporters. We are now focusing on getting more supporters to. It's more communication. It's not really a governance body, but it's like, in principle, if you support the principle of the FAST-Infra label, then you would be a supporter of the FAST-Infra label. We are about to launch that new category. So what we are addressing, the FAST-Infra label is a labeling system designed to identify and evaluate sustainable infrastructure projects to decrease risks for the investors and facilitate the investment decision and processes. So we have mainly 3 problems that you can read on the left side to bridge the infrastructure gap. So first is like, there are infrastructure projects and there is a lot of money around. The problem is to identify the bankable and sustainable infrastructure projects. For to identify that, you need data, and this is what FAST-Infra label is trying to solve. Another problem that we identified is that a project there is no common language on sustainable infrastructure. So the understanding for one project owner might be different to the other when they talk about ESG and the resilience of the project. So by having a common checklist, which is then the self-assessment of the FAST-Infra label, the project will be able to show that, if they comply with the self-assessment, this is their understanding of the sustainability of the project, and the investors will be able to understand. It's risky for me to invest in this because I know that they comply with the following requirements. So it's about improving the risk profile for project owners to access finance and for investors to better identify projects and therefore gain more time and save money that would would have been spent in identifying and do due diligence processes, etc. Instead. So, and the final problem is that there is a lack of track record on the assets. So even lots of assets are being constantly refinanced, and each new investor needs to again do the due diligence process on the infrastructure asset. So there is a lack of track record. This prevents sustainable infrastructure to become a deep and liquid asset class, as we were mentioning at the very beginning. And also for reporting purposes, there is lots and more regulation asking investors to report. But if all the asset managers have different type of giving data on their portfolio of assets, then it becomes very difficult for an investor to have aggregated data on the portfolio of the assets. So the FAST-Infra label is hopefully helping in finding a solution to all these problems. So the FAST-Infra label is a global guideline and measurement system that is building actually on more than 45 existing sustainability standards, like the IFC performance standards, the Equator principles, the QII, but also IUCN, the TCFD, the TNFD. So there are lots of underlying standards, principle frameworks under the FAST-Infra label. We are not creating anything here. It's a comprehensive tool applicable to any infrastructure sector and stages, and very simple to use. You will have a case study after this presentation, and so we will have the direct feedback from a project owner on the usability of the tool. So applicable to any infrastructure stage, any sector, and also across regions. Regarding data, this is the purpose of having Bloomberg working with us on this, is really to develop this technology platform, able to collect all the data, but not only collecting them, but ordering them and being able to have some really reliable data sets, which are also comparable from one asset to the other. The self-assessment is open to everyone. It's for free. And we strongly encourage to really improve the credibility of the self-assessment, to go for verification, which this will be done with by a third-party verifier, an independent third-party verifier. So as I was mentioning at the beginning, the initiative comes from the private sector. They wanted to have their own label, so apolitical, not region-specific, not sector-specific. So and really this was the intention also by gathering the organization of the many organizations of the infrastructure ecosystem in the governance bodies. So finally, we can say it's a one-stop solution to support the different infrastructure players. So first, the infrastructure owners and developers, that the self-assessment will help them improve the project risk profile. They will understand better the good practices on the market. They will be able to show that they are following good ESG and resilience practices. And they will also gain in visibility, because by having the self-assessed label, you will be presented in international events, so getting access to more international finance. For infrastructure investors, the FAST-Infra label will hopefully help them inform their investment decisions by improving the deal origination, simplify all the sustainability screening and due diligence processes that they are doing, so hopefully saving them time and costs, and also improve the data that will help them in the reporting process. Finally, for the public sector, that they are really seeking for the real change on the long term So developing sustainable and resilient infrastructure will help them to deliver the long-term well-being that they are aiming for the society. It will also enable them to attract partners to investments, and mainly private partners, and give a credible signal that they are really actually committed to sustainability. So now going to the third part, the framework. So this is again saying that we are not building anything new, but really taking from existing standards and regulations. FAST-Infra label has the most comprehensive set of criteria for assessing sustainable infrastructure. We are assessing the projects along 4 dimensions: the typical environmental, social, and governance, ESG, and we are adding to that the adaptation and resilience dimension, which is really going beyond the IFC performance standards. You see here the 14 criteria, 4 for environmental, 5 for the social dimension, and 4 for governance. Resilience is one comprehensive criteria. So for each of the criteria, there is a set of indicators. So we are about to launch the 3rd version already of the framework. So last year, end of last year, we had a sector-specific framework really targeting PV and wind assets. We run that on a few projects already, and we were able to showcase 5 self-assessed labeled projects at COP28 in Dubai at the end of the year. Beginning of this year, we launched a sector-agnostic version. We are also currently testing that on a few projects. So later on, the case study is one of them, the South African project. And in parallel, we were launching a public consultation. We got 600 entries, 200 text comments on this public consultation that enabled us to really improve, again, the framework, improve mainly the user-friendliness of the framework. So we are about to launch this 3rd version, taking into consideration all the comments received during the public consultation. So as you see, we decreased by almost 100 the number of indicators, making it less of a burden for the projects. And also we improved the dependency between indicators. So to make it some indicators will even disappear depending on the answer that you are providing. So we are trying to make it always easier for projects, improve the usability of this framework. Here's the process. First, you need to apply on the FAST-Infra label website. And then depending on the case, if it's before the launch of the data repository and the online platform, you will get access to the workbook. At the moment, it's still a beta version. It's an Excel file you will have access to that Excel file. And in future, from November on, most probably, it will be the project directly assessing the online platform with the questions online. But the questions and the indicators, the criteria, it will be all the same. So first, the project needs to confirm it has some documentation, which we call the minimum safeguards, which are mainly risk assessment documents like an ESIA, environmental and social impact assessment, or an environmental and social management system. Is it in place? Is there a stakeholder engagement plan available? Is there a climate adaptation plan available, and this kind of thing? Also, if the project complies with the IFC performance standards, for example, or the equator principles. If the project complies with them and can confirm that it has the minimum safeguards, then the project will be able to answer for the indicators corresponding to the 14 criteria that we saw before. And for each criteria, the project can also showcase a positive contribution aligned with the sustainable development goals. To get the self-assessed label, you only need to demonstrate one positive contribution among the 14 criteria. If the project satisfies with all the requirements, it will get the self-assessed FAST-Infra label. This is the stage number 3 that you see on the right. As I said previously, we are strongly encouraging projects to get the third-party verification, because until the the FAST-Infra label self-assessment, it's only a self-declaration. There is absolutely no verification. It's really a service that we are providing to the project to understand how they behave in terms of ESG resilience, and also to give this information to investors, but there is no verification. So if you go for a third-party independent verification, you will, if successful, you will earn the verified FAST-Infra label. So in summary, again, I think I already mentioned that the framework is sector agnostic. Each type of asset can apply. Each project stage, even in development. So if you are in development, you may not have all the minimum safeguards in place yet, but there is an option to commit, for example, to have an ESIA in a defined time. And it's globally applicable and compatible with emerging and developing economies, of course, because this is really our target. On this slide, you see the communication benefit that you may get if you go through the process. So if you go for the self-assessment, you will get a complimentary sustainability report that will allow you as a project to understand how good you are performing in terms of sustainability and resilience. If you get the self-assessed label, then you will benefit from publication on our website or a post on social media. And also you will be presented to investors. If you have more than one self-assessed project, then you have even more presentation opportunities. And if you get the verified label, then we will on top really direct, you will have access to a network of investors, and you will be highlighted on events and in webinars. So our journey so far on this sustainable transition in infrastructure. So I already mentioned the initiative was starting in 2020, back in 2020. Then GIB and Bloomberg were appointed to run the Secretariat and the data repository. This was in November 2022. This was announced at COP27. So mainly we're working 1 year, 2023, on setting up the governance bodies and also launching the first version of the framework, which was this really sector-specific PV and wind framework. We managed to assess a few projects, and 5 projects got the self-assessed label. We presented that at COP28. And now we are about to launch the third version, as I was saying, and this is still the beta version. So here there is still an opportunity for a dialogue with the Secretariat, understanding like how the framework works, if there are difficulties with some of the questions. Then in Q4, it will be an online platform accessible from the project directly, and there will be no more interaction with the Secretariat. So now, if you allow me, I will show you a little video to have a look at how it looks like, this tool. So I'm going to share the video. No, sorry, I'm not at the right place. Let me try again. Okay, so there you go. This is the Excel file that we will share if you are interested in getting the self-assessed label. Here's the index. You see how much you answered from the question, and this is how the project identification looks like. So you enter your name, status of the project, if it's under development, construction, or operation. Then you go to the minimum safeguards. Here are all the documentation that we are asking, for example, ESIA, yes or no, or if you are committing because you are in development. And here you see the different criteria. So this is the environmental dimension. The first criteria is about biodiversity. Here below at the bottom, you see the social criteria and the governance criteria. In each case, you have pre-filled answer that you can select from a drop-down, yes, no, or maybe not applicable. And depending on the questions, some of the indicators might disappear. For example, if you are a project dealing with water or not, if it's not relevant in your case, then the following indicators will disappear. Additionally, you benefit from a glossary for some of the terms and a bibliography showing all the sources behind the indicators of each criteria. So these are the 45 plus framework standards, etc., as I was mentioning. This is the feedback form. In case you are not fitting in one of the categories that we provide in the drop-downs, you can always put a feedback here and we will improve with time the framework. So that was it. I'm going to come back to the presentation. There is one more slide I want to show. So this is the future. So I just showed you the Excel file. Now in future, this is how it looks like. This is what Bloomberg is working on. They are working on a secure data storage, an intuitive and simple application tool. But again, the indicators will stay the same. And in future, a reliable database. So once we have we are scaling up, then we have a rich amount of data, then it will become very interesting for the market and for the investors. This is a map showing the first project, the pioneers, the first movers with the FAST-Infra label. So we have in COP28, we were able to showcase these 5 projects mentioned here, 2 in the Philippines, 2 in Vietnam, and 1 in India. They were all PV projects. Now we have other projects being assessed in Africa and in South America. And this is the last slide. So how to engage with the FAST-Infra label? You can either join our executive advisory committee, or I guess in your case, there is no interest to become an approved verifier, but you could also adopt the FAST-Infra label, but by testing it in case you are interested and have an infrastructure project that you want to assess. You're welcome to to register on the website. So thank you very much for your attention. And happy to welcome you to be part of the movement accelerating the development of sustainable infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Natalie, for this presentation. And now I can give the floor to Jacqueline and Umar for the case study presentation.
Thank you, Nida. I'm just going to share my screen and take you through our case study project that we recently received the self-assessment label for. By way of quick background, my name is Jacqueline Okeyo. I'm joined here by Umar Salman. I'm the founder and CEO of Mzansi Clean Energy Capital. We are a clean utilities fund that is focused on raising blended finance to invest in clean energy and water projects for affordable housing households, for affordable housing buildings. We're actually partnering with affordable housing landlords, the large landlords, and we are piloting, packaging pilots to be able to execute these clean energy and water projects that we create jointly with them. We have also managed to secure some strategic partnerships in the last couple of years. We are a startup. We were selected under the Global Innovation Lab for Climate Finance for the East and Southern Africa region to represent that specific region in the 2024 cohort. So here we're working with the Climate Policy Initiative to strengthen our instrument, our innovative instrument, our fund, and to also tap into a network of funders. So very excited about that. And then also we have now just received the great news about 2 weeks ago that we received the self-assessment label for FAST-Infra. So I think we are one of the first projects on the African continent. Very excited about this new partnership with FAST-Infra, and we are really hoping that we can get more and more of our projects in our pipeline accredited to receive this self-assessment label with the FAST-Infra. We have a target of raising about $35 million and investing this in renewable energy and clean energy water projects to reach a minimum of 9,000 households within the next couple of years. So ambitious targets, and I'm sure with partnerships like the FAST-Infra, we'll be able to get there. The main barriers that our entity is really trying to address relate to low to moderate income tenants. These households are significantly burdened with utility increases, and also their affordability levels do not lend to them being able to invest in renewable energy products. So they're very constrained from that perspective. The landlords, affordable housing landlords on the other side, also have significant constraints. Their traditional capital stack does not allow them to be able to invest in renewable energy infrastructure. And they're also focused mainly on their bread and butter, which is, it's their bricks and mortar. They're not really in the business of creating renewable energy projects. And then finally is the funding piece. There have been a lack of investable propositions, particularly in the affordable housing space. Most of the investable propositions have been in the market residential sector, where the margins are better, the payback periods are also improved, also much better. And so we haven't really seen a lot of investable propositions in the affordable housing segment. So really, this is where our fund is really positioning itself and looking to solve these barriers for these 3 different categories that I've mentioned. This is the project that we have packaged, our first pilot with a large affordable housing landlord in Johannesburg. It's a just under 4.5 megawatt solar mini grid plant that will be installed in the inner city of Johannesburg. This is a large affordable housing landlord, 750 households will be able to access clean energy. And this is about a $7 million project over 3 buildings. Okay. Focusing more now on our process in terms of securing the self-assessment label. We know we are a startup, like I mentioned earlier, so we were very concerned initially about the potential work and the effort that we were thinking would go into getting a self-assessment label. Because we are limited in terms of resources, limited also in terms of human capital. But these concerns were, sort of put to the side, and it wasn't really something that we were, once we started going in the process, we realized that this process was much simpler than we had envisioned. It took us about 3 to 4 weeks to put this our submission together, and it was just between myself and Umar, and we had an additional administrative support just working specifically on this application. We also relied heavily on the FAST-Infra support team. They were very instrumental in just helping us understand exactly how the self-assessment label process would work and taking us step by step through the process. So that introductory meeting we had with them was really very crucial in terms of helping us visualize how we are dealing with the information, what sort of information we need to be focused on in terms of preparing. And so that's also helped us to simplify our processes. And the nice thing about this label is that you're really leveraging the information resources you already have. As project developers, we've spent a lot of time trying to design the project, trying to speak to the landlords. And so this labeling process actually allowed us to be able to just pull from that information and that data to be able to capture this in the documentation that is required. When you look at your minimum safeguards, when you look at your positive contributions criteria, this sort of information is really like just pulling from the project design elements that we have been working on, in our business plans and our applications to funders, et cetera, et cetera. Also, we additional information that we needed to do a little bit of research on is, the Environmental Social Action Plan, the IFC performance standards, those Equator principles. That sort of information also helped our application. And then finally, some of the key lessons that we've learned really is, this label, is very much aligned with our objective. Our objective, we are a clean energy fund, so sustainability is very, very, very critical to us. We are also in the market to target climate funders, climate investors, climate partners. And if you look at FAST-Infra, these are the people within their network. So there was natural alignment from that perspective. The second piece really also is around, there's no duplication in certification standards. I particularly was worried about that because we have landlords who have their properties already accredited with EDGE. They have the EDGE certification. So we were worried about how do we position the FAST-Infra label in terms of, value add? What is the value proposition that we're really selling to the landlords in terms of why we're taking the project through a self-assessment label with FAST-Infra? But use the confidence that we really got through this process is that, this self-assessment label is dealing with completely different items in terms of sustainability. We mentioned those IFC performance standards, putting together a stakeholder engagement plan. A lot of these things, the positive contributions, these things are not dealt with the EDGE certification. So it was complementary. And then the other critical piece really was around we're targeting a lot of concessionary funders, financiers in terms of our instrument, because we are really focused on making sure that the clean energy we're providing to the end users is affordable. So there's a lot of reporting, impact reporting and measuring that is required with the funders that we're dealing with. And so the documentation that FAST-Infra required us to provide or undertake to provide really is aligned with the sort of funders that we're targeting. So it's just also helped us to have like a repository of data that we can track and that we can also present to these concessionary funders and let them know that we are aligned from a sustainability perspective. And then just quickly, in terms of minimum safeguards the lessons that we learned there, the stakeholder engagement report, for me was one critical piece. Just having to, this was a document that we decided to prepare as part of to support our submission. Here, really just underscored the importance of the key stakeholders. So local municipality, very critical in terms of the success of our project. The tenants, the surrounding community, very critical. The landlord. So building capacity for these key stakeholders, is quite intricately linked to the success of our project. And so through going through this FAST-Infra process, we realized the full extent of how these stakeholders were influencing the sustainability outcome of our project. And so this has also helped us to develop our technical assistance facility parallel to our fund that will support the capacitating of these key stakeholders. And then the label is also it accommodated a lot of our innovation. So because we are an innovative instrument, we were particularly worried that it's not really going to be recognized in this label. So for example, we are undertaking, we are quite innovative in terms of how we are using a risk guarantee in terms of the financing, when we are also planning on introducing some demand response strategies to just encourage particularly the female-headed households to conserve energy, to create a little bit more energy awareness. And so we were wondering, whether some of these things would be recognized in this label, and they absolutely were. And so we managed to receive positive contributions under the inclusivity and gender, as well as resilience categories. And then just a final point is, also other items like, land acquisition, we had to think a little bit about, our project from that perspective. Those are things we were not thinking about. The circular economy, we were focused more on project design and operations. We didn't really think about, what is happening with our infrastructure at the end of life. How are we handling the disposal of the infrastructure? So this label really makes you think about certain sustainability categories that you didn't really consider in the beginning. So I just want to hand over to my colleague Umar to talk you through some of the positive contribution lessons that we learned.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Jacqueline, for the popular explanation. So on the positive contribution, one important point was how we could demonstrate how resilient and how our projects support climate adaptation. And then we had to substantiate that. So one thing that the label actually done to us was to, give us that opportunity to be able to access the quantity of green energy, we're bringing to the table, the size of the load we're taking off the grid. And so it turns out that those particular assessments were selling points, before our, sponsors, our clients, and our, those who supporting us. So, I mean, it was a very wonderful contribution from that side. Another point is around pollution prevention. So while we're busy developing our model in the planning stage, we didn't really delve more into the future of operational stage. So one thing the label actually did to us was actually, give us that insight to look into the operational stage. For instance, there were questions around how do you plan to manage water? How do you intend to clean your panels? How do you plan to, take care of battery waste management and all of those? So we're able to, integrate that into our model. And so that's another way that the label actually has supported us. Another point to mention is the label also help us to commit ourselves into future undertakings. So just like I mentioned that we were busy working on the planning stage, but the label actually looked into the future by asking questions around what are the commissioning strategies for your plant? What are the waste management strategies? So we're able to incorporate all of this into our model. So overall, so I want to say that the FAST-Infra label has helped us, in fine-tuning our model, at the same time, help to enhance our brand, so to say. So I want to say thank you very much, FAST-Infra, for the good opportunity, and I will look forward to getting the next levels of the labels. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's all the content we had. We'll hand it over back to you, Nida.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline and Umar, for this great presentation. I think it was a perfect example of how you walked us through from the beginning of the preparation of the process, considering also the capacity, the human capital that you have within your team, and also emphasizing the complementary factors of FAST-Infra to the project development to receive funding, and how it's helped you to consider all the elements to the end cycle of the projects while planning from the start. It was really valuable to hear all these things. Thank you so much. And before going to the Q&A session, we will have a quick poll for the audience. Can we see the poll questions? Start the first one. So now that you learned about FAST-Infra label, and would you be interested to attend the training on how to use FAST-Infra label and how to self-assess your projects? Maybe I can give a couple of minutes to the audience to answer. Can we see the results? Yes, great to see that there is a huge interest. And can we see the other question? Yeah, it's very similar, but if you have more questions to further build on the self-assessing process. And can we see the results? Great. Thank you so much. And we can move on to the Q&A session, and we highly encourage you to write down your questions in the chat box. For those of the participants who were requesting the presentations will be shared via email after the webinar. And there is a question regarding the list of criteria. Is the list of criteria publicly available and accessible?
Yes. The list of criteria is accessible, so it's a bit hidden at the moment. I think it's still available on the public consultation. But very soon, like normally at the end of the week, we have an updated version that's going to be featured more clearly, less hidden. Yeah, it's going to happen this week. And in case I can send it as well over if you need it urgently before the end of the week.
Thank you so much. And we have a question to Jacqueline and Omar that they appreciate your works for environmental presentation. And as a fund, do you support various environmental conservation and youth support programs? And if so, we would like to welcome you to partner with us in creating awareness amongst youth and women.
Thank you for the question. So we are mainly being led by the landlords that we are working with in terms of the communities and programs that community projects and initiatives that they're working on, very much centered around where the landlords' subject sites are located. But yeah, happy to share my email address with Frederick, and he can be in touch with us.
Great. So I don't see any other questions in the chat box, but feel free to ask. Maybe I can ask one question to Natalie on behalf of TAP applicants. And we heard a case study from Jacqueline and Omar, but I was also wondering, how would you say, on average, how long does it take to get the self-assessed label?
So I don't know exactly, Jacqueline, how long it took you, but like my first answer, my first go at it would be it depends on the knowledge of the person answering the self-assessment, but we expect a few days, and we are giving in general 2 weeks for the project to complete the self-assessment. But I wonder also from you, Jacqueline, how long did it take you in the end?
Yeah, so we took about 3 to 4 weeks, but that was spending around, about 10 hours a week just working on the application, because we wanted to submit a lot of our minimum safeguard supporting documentation. We just didn't want to undertake. We actually wanted to spend some time prepping these documents so we know what it is we are committing to. So it took us 3 to 4 weeks. It could have taken us a little bit shorter if we focused entirely on this, but yeah, it did not take as long as we had anticipated in our minds.
So that means that it took you 3 to 4 weeks because the inclusion of all the minimum safeguards you hadn't necessarily in place, but if you have them, then it would be more shorter. And I guess you would be able to answer everything in 2 weeks, right? If you had all the minimum safeguards in place.
Absolutely. So this is also why going through this label process was it was value adding, just in terms of the sort of partners we're looking to get on board. I mentioned the stakeholder engagement plan. We had not spent any time, on that at all. So we decided let's actually understand, what are the requirements of the stakeholder engagement plan? What are they trying to see? So we actually sat down and we put that together. And then also with the IFC principles, IFC performance standards, wanting to actually have a better understanding of what are these performance standards, and what are we undertaking to do, spending a little bit more time trying to understand that in the context of our project. Also the environmental and social action plan, putting that together and looking at how that sort of supports the stakeholder engagement plan, works hand in hand with the stakeholder engagement plan. What can we do that's symbiotic? What can we do that is different? What can we commit to in terms of the landlords that we're working with, the tenants, etc. So this is really where we decided to spend some of our time, and it really has helped us strengthen the business case of our fund.
It is really valuable. It's setting a criteria to see what are your gaps, or almost like gives you a guideline to plan and scope your project, right? It's a perfect opportunity.
Absolutely. Just maybe a final point to say is that, I think as project developers, you spend a lot of time just focused on designing the project and getting the funding, getting the business plan, but don't underestimate how much that information will actually support your FAST-Infra label, self-assessment label application. A lot of that information can just be migrated into and support these self-assessment labels. So you already have that information. A lot of the information we already had. I think it was just pulling this information together and structuring it in such a way that proves our story, proves our case from a sustainability perspective. So just to encourage any project developers who are out there or municipalities that are working with project developers, a lot of that information you already have, particularly if you are providing, any products that are sustainable or projects that are sustainable, that have such sustainability targets. You've got that information. It's just, this is now sort of like a central repository to make sure you're tracking this information and you are reporting on it and you have a plan to execute on this and engage with investors on it.
Yeah, so one point I want to also highlight is that despite that the application procedure was self-explanatory, but I also commend the effort of the FAST-Infra label team in whenever we have any reason to double check any of the things in the application process, they get back to us timely, and that also really helped us a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the great feedback. Very appreciated. Thank you.
This should be a great encouragement also for other projects that are planning to apply or now that are they have they're in their radar. But yeah, to close the session, I guess we don't have any further questions from the audience. But thank you so much to Natalie for introducing us the label, and Jacqueline and Umar for explaining us your process and presenting your great project. And thank you so much for all the attendees who participated in the session. We are looking forward to hear from you in the upcoming months.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye.